Hey, Shinji.
What is it, Kaoru?
I can't believe they replaced Lance Bass as Sephiroth.
Even outside the English dubs of Japanese cartoons we usually cover on this channel, recasting actors has become pretty common in the entertainment industry, so honestly it's hard to know where to start. For animation in general, I guess it can be easier to slip under the radar since a character's physical appearance doesn't need to change, while in live action it's almost always more obvious.
Hurry, you put your name in a goblet of fire.
But even in voiceover, actor replacement is generally seen as a negative thing to have happen at all, and sometimes it's even hard for us to accept when it's unavoidable, or even potentially beneficial, when there's room for the original to be improved upon. There's no way we can hope to cover or explain every individual instance of dub recasting in this video. Part of that's because there's so many, but also because a lot of the information isn't transparent, which in itself is a problem that needs discussing. Though if there are any actors or directors who come across this video and notice we missed something, we'd love to know what. The voice acting industry is an industry after all, so looking at the various reasons why and how recasts happen might reveal some other, bigger problems with how it currently works. For better or worse, those charged with overseeing a dub's production on either side of the ocean have more ownership of these characters than the actors hired to play them. This also means they're technically within their right to do as they please without always needing to offer a public explanation. ADV lost the rights to Gurren Lagann before they could even finish their dub, and the actors had no say in that.
So long, Jiha Village! These boys are surface bound to the place I saw in my youth!
Adios, Jiha Village. We're going up to the surface. The surface I saw as a kid!
Of course, just because you can do anything doesn't always mean you should, especially when from an outsider looking in, those decisions are bound to bring up questions of concern. Remember the Sound Euphonium movies? Ignoring the fact that they got dubbed before the TV series, which is weird enough. The second one was dubbed at a different studio with a new cast, but a few of the first film's actors were in this one too. What happened there? Why did this even happen?
Why are they like this?
Did they just want to rectify some stuff from the first film's dub? I never saw that much negative reception for the Liz dub, so that's a tad hard to believe.
Some may say it's a good change, others may say it's a bad change.
There's probably some cases where the dub actor just doesn't want to return, either for monetary or personal reasons, but chances are a lot of them already feel a strong enough reverence for these roles, or they just want to do them justice for as long as possible.
You know, it's funny, I get asked this question a lot. If they brought a show back and your character was in it, would you want to play it? My answer to that is always, do actors refuse work? Everyone reads articles about celebrities that have people falling all over them to hand them scripts, and they go, oh, I don't know, should I be in World War Z or 12 Years a Slave, or what should I work on? And that's not the way a working actor works. Voice actors don't really refuse work. And why would I refuse to play a character that I enjoyed playing? It's up to the producers whether they decide to hire me or not.
Just look at Catherine Beaumont. She reprised her Disney roles like 50 years later for Kingdom Hearts 1. There have even been cases where actors have come out of retirement specifically to reprise an anime role, despite having moved on to other professions. And there's also been instances where actors might have had no reason to assume they were getting recast till after it's been publicly announced. Even when the decisions themselves do make a lick of sense, that lack of a definitive explanation can instill little confidence in anime fans and actors alike. Maybe the higher-ups overseeing the dub eventually decided the first voice didn't work and wanted to go in a different direction? Trust me, sometimes I do think that can be a decent reason, as we'll get to later. But I also think it's worth checking to see if your first choice was already qualified anyway before replacing them.
I will destroy over. I want revenge. I want revenge!
Easy there, Brando.
Huh?
You're overacting. Be more natural. Less is more.
Yes, of course.
Most actors understand that sometimes what they're giving the director isn't always what the final product needs or what those overseeing the property might want, but the actor can't do much about that while they're under the director's thumb. I do think directors ought to be open-minded, but in cases where something very specific is needed, they can communicate that and move on.
Now follow me and I'll lead you to victory!
You were reading my line!
There's a story about how Barbara Goodson had to step down from playing Rita Repulsa in Power Rangers because a survey of kids didn't think she sounded scary enough.
I was very upset that they fired me. I said, why don't you just direct me to do something scary if you want it scary? They said, well, we're going to have auditions, and you're welcome to audition if you want to. I said, well, thanks, I will.
According to Barbara, the reason Rita's new voice sounded the way it did was because of how angry she was for having to retry for a role for something the staff could have easily fixed. Not offering that courtesy can come off as a director or producer not trusting an actor's ability to, well, act. Then again, perhaps they refrain from giving an explanation because said explanation doesn't have the actor's or the final product's best interest in mind. This is still showbiz after all, with actors getting replaced or mistreated for petty, questionable, or even just inconsiderate reasons, while bad shortcuts get taken to reach some sort of bottom line. If the actors aren't in town, whoever's in charge of casting might just replace them with local actors to make things easier production-wise, or production might be outsourced to a studio that's willing to take on the job for lower pay compared to others. Sometimes it might even be done as a means of intimidating or betraying actors and staff. That kind of callousness and cynicism isn't uncommon to the entertainment industry at large, and voiceover is no exception. One of the biggest anime recasts of all time came down to money. Funimation shifted Dragon Ball Z's recording away from Canada and instead used local actors to cut costs, and the transition at the time was not smooth.
Where are the Dragon Balls?
I'm so close, I just can't stand it. Ooh.
No way!
Oh, no! I hate needles! Get me out of here!
It was motivated by these producers saying, like, I don't want to fly every day of my life to Canada to get this work done. We need to see if we can do this here. They really wanted to see if they could bring that production to the United States.
For older fans, recasting can feel like a slap in the face if you've grown attached to what came before, while other times it can deter new fans from getting invested in a show's dub regardless of quality. And if anyone knows about that, it's Netflix. Yeah, you all know what I'm talking about, and it happened just last year. They recast Saiki-K and Takagi-san. The first seasons of both shows were dubbed by Funimation, but Netflix got new actors and staff for the sequels. I really love how their English trailer for Saiki-K tries to be all meta and funny by breaking the fourth wall, but conveniently leaves out the fact that everyone sounds different.
Just when I thought my TV series was over, I've apparently been reawakened. Not only that, now I'm streaming globally on Netflix. Are they gonna make me fight monsters with those 80s kids?
Granted, the episodic nature of those shows could allow fans to jump into either without ever having seen the first seasons.
Might as well go with it.
But too much recasting over a short period might deter newcomers from watching a show in English at all, because why bother if you need to knowingly overcome that hurdle anyway? This more so applies for popular long-running franchises like Fate and Gintama, which have had some of their most prominent characters dubbed by like 3 different people, while the Japanese side has kept things fairly consistent for years.
Cool, the end.
But beyond that, there's an emotional attachment or association a lot of fans will have with the original voices, and even very subtle traits about them that, if they don't hear, it's gonna sound jarring even if those replacement actors sound technically fine when judged on their own. That can be felt in the Trigun movie, the recent Detective Conan movie, and another classic that began back in the 90s, the Berserk anime. I mean, first they turn it into this visual monstrosity, but we can't even have the satisfaction of hearing Mark DeRaisin as Guts. Our Guts.
I want to see it through to the end, to see what heights Griffith and the Band of the Hawk can reach.
You always manage to be strong. So then because one chooses to fight, one can't back out.
But I'm not going to leave any loose ends behind. I will take full responsibility as the leader of the Hawk's Raiders.
Who's gonna jerk me off?
Compare that to Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. It also got a subpar CGI sequel series. But the reason I actually checked it out was because all my favorite actors were back in it.
It's what the liberals feared all along.
And I reckon I'd have given CG Berserk a shot too if it had done the same. From what highly ranked dubs like Hellsing, Black Lagoon, and Haruhi demonstrate, where Funimation took the time to outsource subsequent additions to the franchise in an attempt to keep actor consistency, there's a lot to be gained from doing what you can to not fix what ain't broke. However, in the world of anime dubs, sometimes not fixing things can actually be the harder option. It's easy to rage against the industry, but people need to understand that sometimes recasting wasn't always the immediate first choice. Individual actors could get physically or medically hindered. For adolescent boys, their voice can crack over time. And yes, the actor might pass away before the character itself is retired. If an actor, after booking a role the first time, is later deemed unprofessional or morally compromised, they may not be invited back. Or if they turn out to behave like a jerk while recording is going on, maybe the staff won't want to bring them back to deal with them again. Or maybe they were bad at their job and the director barely squeezed a passable performance out of them the first time. Maybe scheduling them to actually come into the studio was just too much of a struggle? Sometimes recasting can be as basic as that, but there are other reasons that may pertain to the American voice acting union, SAG-AFTRA. Obviously, we're outsiders to the union, so we don't know everything about its current affairs, but it seems they're currently going through some troubles what with the whole cutting benefits during a pandemic thing. However, some union acting contracts might prevent actors from reprising their roles on non-union projects, while other companies, even non-union companies, can stipulate in their contracts that their actors can't reprise the same character at other studios. You could sidestep things like that by going under a pseudonym or going financial core, which is where actors can work on non-union projects as well at the expense of some union privileges. But not every actor may want to take those options. If a union gets involved in production itself, non-union actors might get pushed out for legal reasons. A non-union actor actually can be invited into a union production through a process called Taft-Hartleying, where a director can make a case to the union about why they need a specific non-union actor. But they'd probably only want to do this for 1 or 2 actors, not a whole cast. However, these examples aren't exclusive to anime dubbing. We'll most likely bring this up a lot in the future, but it's worth highlighting that the pay for this rather technical job is not very rewarding compared to other professions in the entertainment industry.
I need a career change, something where I can make piles of money with no work.
So on one hand, role reprisals could be another source of income in such a trying industry, but inversely, some actors may want to prioritize more sustainable gigs over their anime roots. It's not at all uncommon for actors who have done a lot of anime dubbing to move on to doing more profitable kinds of voiceover, and rectifying that is something that's honestly beyond the scope of this video. Flying to and from different states just to reprise an anime role also may not be worth it if the pay for said role doesn't cover travel expenses. And though they're starting to get a handle on it now, not every company was already equipped to record actors in their homes. Here's Isaac and Miria from Bakano, recorded in Texas at Funimation.
Let's be good guys for our final caper.
But how, Isaac?
Oh, well, by stealing the Mafia's money, my dear.
Oh, wow! That's an incredible idea!
And here they are in a cameo in Durarara, which was recorded in LA at Bang Zoom.
You see that, Miria? It's one of Japan's ghostly fireballs!
Yeah! It's one of Japan's ghostly fireballs, Isaac! Look!
They actually sound closer to their original Japanese portrayals here. But again, if you're a fan of the Bakano dub like we are, then this cameo just doesn't have the intended meta effect or satisfaction. Thank God they got it right for Lucky Star, because that show's story is all about anime culture back in 2007 when Haruhi Suzumiya was popular. Without dub actors reprising their appropriate roles, half the comedy wouldn't work for English audiences.
Daisuke Ono at your service.
Well, kid, you want to buy a Kyon card? No, Sasuke's the one for you!
Hi there, I'm Minoru Shiraishi, the assistant.
Yes, I want to shake your hand! I do! I want to go! I want to see!
Nowadays, the issue of location is less restrictive due to remote recording and directing. Some studios like NYAV Post function with one recording branch in New York and one in LA. Funimation will sometimes collaborate with directors at other studios to facilitate role reprisals when it's possible, and because of the pandemic, much of the dubbing industry has been forced to adapt to at-home recording to stay up and running. We do personally wish remote recording was taken better advantage of for more creative casting, but we've talked about that before on this channel. As we mentioned on our video about COVID and how it might affect the industry, the individual obstacles of remote recording can be overcome, but when they combine it might become less viable, particularly for the actors who weren't used to it prior to the pandemic. While multiple recording studios function with similar equipment and engineers can help fix minor audio discrepancies, not everyone has the necessary tools at home nor the money to get it. Someone could potentially be recast if they can't make home recording work in time for a project's release deadline, compounding a lot of those aforementioned recasting issues. We've definitely seen some of those deadlines change due to COVID, but when you consider the current prominence of the simuldub format, some dub episodes can sadly have as little as 1 to 2 weeks turnaround. If there's enough time and foresight, performances could be rescheduled in advance. Aaron Dismuke recorded some episodes for the Dr. Stone simuldub ahead of time so that he could still come to a con here in Australia, and the simuldub for Fruits Basket was able to bring back Laura Bailey because the episodes were recorded months in advance. However, if an actor is experiencing any of those obstacles that cannot be dealt with immediately, then a recast, whether temporary or permanent, could be the better available option. Even when recasting is inevitable, some people at these companies probably understand how important specific performances are to fans, and will do their best to retain that familiarity through voice matching. This is an industry-wide practice, where actors will be brought in or directed to specifically emulate another actor, even though, yes, it does have its own spectrum of quality.
But as we're honorable pirates, we should always stick to the code.
Mustn't strike a pirate aboard ship when said pirate offers to confabulate.
When an actor can't or doesn't want to continue, companies and studios might just try to find someone who can imitate that sound as closely as possible.
Like I always say, if it can't hide the dirt, then I don't want it over my shirt. Like I always say, if it can't hide the dirt, then I don't want it over my shirt.
When I interviewed Marissa Lenti, she mentioned that they actually did try to get actors back from the old City Hunter dubs to work on the new Shinjuku privatized movie, but that was a case where they were simply unavailable. But ADR director Amber Lee Connors still wanted to respect what those dubs had brought to the table, by giving it a similar sound and retaining some quirks.
A 1, a 2, a 3, triple nookie!
It isn't quite voice matching. The new actors give their own performances, but still honor what some fans might be familiar with. However, in some cases, it's clear that honor isn't always enough for some fans. The Final Fantasy VII Remake had all its main characters recast from the voices we've been used to for over a decade. At first, that might be understandable, because not all of Final Fantasy VII's voice acting is exactly excellent, though at least they replaced Lance Bass.
Shall I give you despair?
These new voices sounded at least somewhat reminiscent of the old ones.
I couldn't care for myself, let alone anyone else.
Never said I was. I'm just here for the paycheck.
As far as I know, some of the legacy actors have publicly made it known they're aware they were recast and even would have liked to reprise. And part of me does wonder if they could have done just as well as the new guys with this stronger direction. Admittedly, that's because I'm very familiar with these old voices. However, some fans suspect this recasting was done to capitalize on younger, more relevant actors without alienating the larger fanbase by having things sound too different, which is supported by some prior roles of the actors in question, as well as this comment from the producer, despite the Japanese voice cast mostly staying as is. In the end, I do think the voice acting for Cloud and his friends improved, but isn't it sad that the old actors weren't the ones to improve it? Then there are situations like the Mastermind of Mirage Pokemon OVA, which marked a significant turning point for the Pokemon dub where the first English actors were recast. Once 4Kids Entertainment's contract expired in early 2006, they were outbid by Taj Productions. According to Stuart Zagnit, the first English voice of Professor Oak, the rest of the original cast weren't allowed to reprise their roles, because their contract with 4Kids prevented them from doing so unless they were no longer willing to work for the company. Taj held new auditions for these characters who debuted the new voices in the Mirage Pokemon special. Ash was played for the first and only time by KZ Rogers.
I've got amazing Pokemon training skills.
But was later replaced by Sarah Natochenny, who disclosed in an interview that at first, the company did in fact want her to emulate the initial dub actor Veronica Taylor.
I've got amazing Pokemon training skills.
And at the very least, it appears that the company wasn't fully transparent regarding some of the recasts. Bill Rogers, who currently plays Brock, actually thought the original dub actor Eric Stewart had voluntarily left. And again, even if you prefer these new voices or the new direction the dub eventually went in, a good argument could be made that this was a situation where the original actors were treated as disposable, interchangeable, unimportant, or at least less important than contract logistics. For dubs with quick turnarounds, maybe the importance of a specific character, the amount of time a recast is needed for, and whether or not enough time is allocated to finding an adequate voice match all need to be considered. My Hero Academia, for example, is no stranger to recasts, with Present Mike, Aizawa, and Recovery Girl all having different dub actors than what they began with for varying professional reasons. But what would happen if Justin Briner was absolutely unable to record as Deku? Would they actually delay the schedule? Or would they attempt to recast one of their most iconic sounding characters in one of their biggest acquired properties? We've seen shows like Tales of Zestiria recast their main leads temporarily due to health issues, after Funimation had ironically worked with Central Command Studios to get the original actors from the games. On the other hand, we had Black Clover's simuldub delayed when Asta's English actor briefly caught the flu. That was only for about a week though, and it's hard to say what would have been done if the situation was more severe. Christopher Ayres, the current English voice of Frieza, was diagnosed with end-stage chronic obstructive pulmonary disease while Dragon Ball Super's dub was airing, requiring a double lung transplant in order to survive. Not only did this inhibit his ability to travel, but he was functioning at around 11 to 15% lung capacity, affecting his ability to record for the show's weekly broadcast. A similar dilemma could apply in original animation, but in that scenario, the showrunners could have the option of simply writing their character out of a scene, or putting them in a situation where they wouldn't have to talk if they had enough prep and foresight. The show must always go on, but for dubbing, the show has already gone on in Japan. Visuals and the flow of events are set in stone. Damon Mills was selected to do a very convincing voice match for Chris. In fact, we almost couldn't tell without checking the credits.
You dare mock me? I will not lie! I am Emperor of the Universe! The likes of you are only fit to grovel at my feet!
However, out of respect to the actor who still desired to play one of his most important roles, and to the fans who still wanted to hear what they considered the definitive English version of this character, a compromise was made. Damon recorded for Frieza in the recent Dragon Ball video games, and when it came to Super's TV broadcast, he acted as a placeholder for moments when Chris wasn't able to record. Then, Chris's voice would later be dubbed back into said moments for the home video release. We can tell this gesture did not go unappreciated by actors and fans alike. Not only was there some transparency in communication, but there was also an attempt made to preserve what many consider to be the definitive English sound for Frieza.
Your patience was not in vain, for as you can see, the Emperor of this universe is back.
You could argue that this was the ideal situation, where most fans and fellow members of the industry respected the effort that was taken to make everyone happy. And it's also why it was good to see Meredith McCoy returning to play Android 18 in Super after being unavailable for Kai.
Why do I get the feeling that you're holding out on me?
Sorry, but I'm not here to be a good sport.
Like we said before, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But then, who is the grand arbiter of what is and ain't broke? Sometimes the entire product goes in a different creative direction, with new actors just being one part of that. We're used to that here in the West with live action and animation alike. So yeah, maybe this recasting isn't purely done out of cynicism. If the characters and stories are going to be reinterpreted anyway, why not let different actors interpret them too? When recasts happen on the Japanese end, it's worth deciding whether the dub should follow suit if it has the means of doing so. If the dub is supposed to honor the intention of the original product, then recasting could be seen as appropriate there. And sometimes that's just a no-brainer. Even the Pokemon Twilight Wings specials have a separate cast to the current TV series that covers similar content. Having said that, there are anime franchises with dubs that almost have their own legacy. So what do you do about the fans and talent that want to return? Digimon, Fruits Basket, Brotherhood, the Berserk movies, even Jessica Calvello's Cutie Honey. These are all notable examples that have been rebooted and expanded upon with different Japanese voice casts, while the English dubs made a point of getting the original dub actors back to varying extents. Though some people could argue these examples are more like half measures that were done for marketing more than for the good of the product. Inversely, Lupin III is an anime with different dub casts for different entries, but unlike other series, I personally don't feel like it's that big a deal, because some of those series have pretty different creative visions anyway. There is a quote-unquote main dub cast led by Tony Oliver that reprises quite often though. And with something as big as Lupin's first 3D CG film, I think it was fitting for that cast to be brought back. Of course, we shouldn't overlook the possibility that a recast can make things better than before. Just like how bringing back the original cast can be seen as praiseworthy, sometimes the decision to recast is almost universally accepted, like with Ico Incarnation. This show was redubbed with a totally different cast within the same year it was released, because the original dub from Miami was riddled with poor acting, overly literal writing, and some really basic production mistakes.
Here, calm down, honey, calm down, honey.
What do you think you're doing?
Calm down, honey, calm down, honey.
That's the kind of mistake I would make. We tend to react negatively to recasting because it's immersion breaking, but when the original performance itself was immersion breaking, the lack of consistency might be worth it. Again, Lance Bass's Sephiroth. Just because it was the first choice doesn't necessarily mean it was the best.
There are countless ingredients that make up the human body and mind, like all the components that make up me as an individual with my own personality.
What do you think I was searching for as I was wandering around the net? A friend? Truth? Or a certain special someone, maybe?
Do still bear in mind what Barbara said earlier. We're sure some of the actors from the first Ico dub, or maybe even some older Canadian dubs, were sad to lose their roles, and maybe could have done a perfectly fine job with the new script and direction. But other times, the performer just won't be able to deliver the best result no matter how hard they try.
It won't be long before you're walking properly. You see, you've had some very slight nerve damage, and it probably will feel a bit strange until you get used to it again.
It's a bad dream. It's a nightmare.
Crispin Freeman was originally going to play the villain in the Cowboy Bebop movie, but was recast before the dub was released because at the time he sounded too young for the character. Heck, the reason Chris Aird's performance as Frieza is so important is because he replaced Linda Young. When it came time to adapt Frieza more faithfully than the old DBZ dub did, Linda unfortunately wasn't able to deliver the lines quickly enough.
Well, our original intention wasn't to recast Frieza. We were planning on reusing
that's right.
Frieza, but when the script started coming in for some of the later episodes, the character just isn't even written the same way as it was before.
Yeah.
Because the dialogue just wasn't the same. And so the dialogue is really, really heavy and really fast. And the voice that Linda was using for Frieza she just couldn't even speak fast enough to...
It's a tricky character to
It
play.
was really hard. She's a crazy, tricky voice for her.
So, rather than stick with the old actor for nostalgia's sake, they went with someone who could do justice to both the Japanese and English legacy of the character.
Greetings, my name is Frieza. As you can no doubt surmise for yourselves, I'm quite the collector of Dragon Balls.
Having said everything we've said in this video, at the end of the day, everyone is gonna have their own judgment as to whether the legacy cast was fine, deserving of a second shot, or if they should be replaced for better or more appropriate talent.
Some may say it's a good change, others may say it's a bad change.
Whoa. This dub is really good. What do you think, Pearl?
But what happens when the interests of the person in charge of making these decisions, whoever they are, isn't privy to the discourse revolving around a dub that isn't so cut and dry? In situations like these where different fans feel like they know what's best for the property, whose opinions are more valid? Okay, fine, we'll talk about Evangelion.
The previous VAs went on audition for their part 2, so we were all just sent completely blind. They had all of our auditions in, and Gainax just chose us based on not knowing anybody's name or anything like that. So it was just a complete clean slate.
We want to stress right away that we don't 100% definitively know why Evangelion was redubbed. There's that post from Something Awful that, while it seems credible, I'm waiting for a better source. However, there was a decent rationale for wanting to redo it for its shiny new debut on Netflix, a huge global streaming platform.
Hey, sit down, you guys. We're still in class.
The first dub from ADV got off to a rather rough start performance-wise. But that's only the beginning. There's added sound effects, missing sound effects, outdated compression technology, actors getting replaced mid-series anyway. Even when they aren't adding in all these ad-libs and the script is close to the translation, the delivery can sometimes be wildly different.
いえ、侵食しているんだわ。AT フィールドをいとも簡単に。
No! It's breaking through it! It went through the AT field like it wasn't there!
You're always nitpicking.
A show that's so important to the legacy and image of anime should have a dub that reflects that prestige, right?
This is mature animation for a discriminating viewer like myself.
And it's why I can kinda understand this situation more than, say, the Final Fantasy VII Remake. The new dub actors sound less like the old English cast and more like the Seiyu.
Well, it's already restored itself this far. It's frozen, but it's still alive. Quite amazing.
すでにここまで復元されています。高価ベークライトで固めてありますが、生きています。
This is as far as the restoration has proceeded. Although it's encased in solidified bakelite, it's alive.
Evangelion was very, very full of Japanese influence. Like that one day, Gainax sent notes. Every week we recorded some lines 30, 40 times just to get it right. They were very particular about pronunciations and translations and subtext and stuff like that. That was like, I've never seen anything like that.
However, many seem to have clashing views about what that ideal Ava dub should sound like.
Tell me something, is she still so wild in bed?
Does she still make a fool of herself when she's sleeping?
What? So fucking what if I'm not you? That doesn't mean it's okay for you to give up. If you do, I'll never forgive you as long as I live. I'm a stranger to you, fine, I don't care. You want to quit, is that it? If you don't do anything right now, I won't ever forgive you.
Some praised the recast and readaptation out of distaste for the old ADV dub, while others felt it was wrong that the original actors didn't get to come back to try their hand at the series with more experience and better production.
I'm so fucked up. I'm the lowest of the low. Don't run away now. Don't run away. Don't run away.
If we talk about the rest of the adaptational differences, we'll be here all day. But maybe an ideal situation would have been similar to what Dragon Ball fans got with Kai, an example of actors growing into roles over time. It was a product that respected cues from the original much more than the old DBZ broadcast did. But it's evident that they wanted to balance this with at least some respect to the old dub and the fans that supported it back in the day. I mean, we theoretically could recast Goku and Krillin to sound more accurate to the Japanese where they're played by women, but that would alienate a large portion of fans whose support made Dragon Ball's presence in the West worth caring about in the first place. Instead, what we got was dialogue and audio direction that aligns a lot more with the tone of the Japanese coming from these familiar American voices.
I am perfection!
Granted, only a handful of anime are decade-spanning multimedia franchises with licensed video games, spin-offs, or hundreds of episodes for actors to eventually prove themselves. Maybe hoping for something like Kai for Evangelion is wishful thinking, but the rebuild movie dubs serve as a good facsimile, even if only 3 members of the original cast were able to reprise.
I want Rei! Give her back!
It just tore through that AT field like it was nothing.
It's proof that they could take direction and adapt to a different approach, one that was more in tune with the original Japanese, while sounding much better on a technical level.
Wait a minute! You're gonna use Unit 1? You can't seriously be considering activating Unit 1.
But still! There's no way! I can't pilot that thing!
No, it just won't work. I'm telling you, there's no way!
There's a certain significance when the legacy cast are the ones to make the necessary improvements. Getting others to do it can play into that feeling of disposability that comes with being a dub actor. I think that's why there's some distaste out there for other clean slate recasts, like Sailor Moon, Hunter x Hunter, Dragon Ball, Gundam Seed, really any of the Canadian dubs that got recast in America. If that Inuyasha sequel thing doesn't bring back the Canadian cast, the poor bastards will barely have anything left.
It's shocking how simple it is to tear the world apart. Although, rebuilding it from scratch is not so easy.
Another ideal scenario for Eva would be to distribute both dubs on the same video track, as we've seen with other redubbed releases. Anime Herald has a comprehensive article on dub preservation that goes over the logistics of keeping older obscure dubs in circulation, which might have had something to do with the Eva situation, though currently we can't be sure.
Hey, Shinji.
What is it, Kaoru?
Which cast do you think is gonna dub the next rebuild movie?
To some people, anime dubbing itself is probably no different to recasting. Subbed versions are more accessible than ever before, which naturally invites comparison once the dub is released later. I mean, original actors have sometimes tried dubbing themselves in English.
Your buns are so beautiful.
Most often, dub actors are tasked with capturing how a character, quote, should sound in English, but not every fan is gonna see that as anything but a shadow of the Japanese anyway. Hopefully the people in these situations don't see themselves as just stand-ins, because sometimes English-speaking fans hear a dub artist's interpretation and can't think of anyone else filling a role that was ironically someone else's to begin with. Whether it's Evangelion, Psyche K, Gundam, Dragon Ball, or whatever, English dubs can gain their own legacy, and sometimes that legacy is worth appreciating, and how much you value a dub's legacy will affect your judgment on whether actors on those shows get replaced for good or bad reasons. Could some of these recasts also be seen as equally valid versions years down the road? Or will they be seen as just cheap knockoffs forever?
You talk crap about stuff all the time, but then you end up giving it a try and you like it.
Okay, look, if we want to get super literal, then the quote ideal voice actor for a certain character might not even be born yet. Casey Mongela was probably still in school when Spike Spencer dubbed Shinji for the first time, and technically no dub's legacy will be 100% spotless. But that still doesn't stop some people's disappointment when actors and performances get treated as disposable. It should be said that actors aren't always the be-all end-all for a dub's quality. The ADR staff definitely play a part in that too. However, there are some dub actors or even whole casts that might have been legitimately good, yet fell to the wayside by being at the wrong place at the wrong time. It's unfortunately going to be a long haul to change the industry in a way that can prevent actors from getting unfairly replaced. We can't ignore the issue that companies often leave us with little to go on. We can't pretend to know why certain facts might need to be withheld. But if they want the fans and actors involved to trust that what they're doing is for the best, then it needs to be communicated better than what's been happening recently. At the very least, I think giving actors a heads up would be a good start. Meanwhile, as fans, we need to come up with a way of criticizing and speaking out against recasts we don't like that doesn't involve attacking the replacement actors. Just remember that not everything is so cut and dry. It is a shame that Chris Ayres has not always played Frieza in English, but he himself is a recast of a recast. The current iconic cast of Dragon Ball were originally selected to voice match the Canadian cast for financial reasons, and which version of each character across multiple different dubs is the best is still debated to this day.
They weren't able to pay these Canadian actors what they were really worth. And while they were still doing it, they were having a hard time keeping a consistent cast too, because when you don't pay someone enough to do something, they find other things more important.
So, which one of you is Goku?
I'm sure people have their own lists of shows they feel weren't given a dub that properly reflects the qualities of the original. Maybe most of it was okay, but there's just one actor that sours the experience. Maybe the show was well cast, but the direction or writing doesn't use them to their fullest potential, and vice versa. Maybe it was enjoyable, but was repackaged into something it was arguably never meant to be. Or maybe the show was just never given the chance to have a dub that properly reflects the massive impact it had on the community. I mean, come on Netflix, you redubbed Ava but gave us the Animax dub for Cardcaptor Sakura.
Hey Sakura, my dad just bought me a new video camera. Do you think I could film you next time?
I get you can't use the old actor, but come on, this show is just as celebrated as Evangelion. Whether recasting is done for quality, convenience, or the nebulous demands from higher-ups on either side of the ocean, these discussions are important and interesting to have. But again, they're much easier to have and share when the dubs themselves are actually properly preserved and accessible.
Goodbye, Mother.
Going forward though, COVID may have permanently changed things by putting the industry in a scenario where it literally can't work without remote recording, so recasting actors due to location will be less tolerable. Now the only obstacles are technology, legality, and debatably laziness. I doubt this topic is gonna leave our minds for a while. What's gonna happen for the new Shaman King? What's gonna happen for The World Ends With You? I mean, what's gonna happen for interspecies reviewers on Right Stuff? Are these shows gonna get dubs? Will they bring the old dub actors back? Will they be done in the style of the old dubs? Should they? There are a lot of reasons anime dub actors get recast, so if your stance on it is completely dogmatic, one way or another, you're going to ignore so many important things about this industry. I mean, if you're already watching dubs, you have to at least be open to the idea that there isn't always just one way to do a character justice. Though, yeah, maybe don't get Lance Bass to play Sephiroth. Thanks for watching to the end, guys. I know it was a long one, and I imagine many of you disagree with a lot of our takes in this video, and that's totally fine. Which of these recasts do you like and dislike? Are there any anime you'd want to see recast or even just redubbed in the future? Leave a comment below and tell us your thoughts. A big thank you to Marissa Lenti for once again fact-checking this video, as well as to Chris Ayres for informing us about his situation. Further thanks to voice actors Joshua Waters and Frankie for being Kaoru and Shinji for us, as well as to Reagan Senpai, Ahoba, Marissa Lenti, Spartacus, Seth Phillips, JR Pictures, Unknown Secret 1000, and everyone else generously supporting us on Patreon. This has been the Cartoon Cypher, and until next time.
Lance Bass is worthy of my grace.